Very good. Okay,
Okay.
you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much. I will do a brief presentation, which will be based on the situation that we are facing today. Next slide, please. Okay, so the first thing is that we need to understand what is in the problem today and what happens through the Strait of Hormuz. So as 35% of the oil is going through the Strait of Hormuz, 20% of natural gas, which is used for nitrogen production, 20 to 30% of finalized fertilizers, depending on the type, 50% of sulfur, which is sulfuric acid to be used for phosphate. And of course, there is the shock of demand, which is the reduction on the demand of these countries of the Gulf, which were key importers of food. Next slide, please. Now, what we are observing today is that the mobility of food across, or vessels across the Strait of Hormuz have shrunk substantially. Yesterday, there were some problems of conflicts in the vessels that were trying to move. This has worsened the situation. But also, we are seeing a side effect on the Suez Canal, which is also starting to have an indirect impact on the conflict and reducing the number of vessels. At the same time, we are observing also in the Panama Channel that there has been increasing fees, which makes it more difficult. In the right-hand side, you can see the shipping costs, how it has been increasing, and how this also will produce a significant problem. Next slide, please. This is to show the impacts of what we are observing, and it's important to understand the mechanics of what are the impacts. So first, the close of energy and the fertilizer mobility will impact several things. Indirectly, it will impact seeds production because they are intense in use of fertilizers. It will, of course, impact the prices of fertilizers, and this will have an effect over the decision of farmers because the input costs will increase and there are a situation of lower prices. And third, the energy market will also have an impact on the operational cost for the farmers. As a result, there will be a potential decrease in yields and increase in agri-food prices, and this will end in a potential reduction of global production for the second half of the year because farmers will have to make choices of planting less inputs and therefore less yields, and this is already happening, or planting less, or switching to crops that can fix nitrogen better, like moving from wheat and corn to soybeans, and selling to biofuels, which is now profitable because we are in around $115 per Brent barrel, so it becomes biofuels becomes very profitable. The consequence of this is for the second half of the year next year, commodity prices will increase, and that increase in commodity prices will lead to food inflation, which incorporates, in addition to the commodity, like the bread, the wheat is 15%, the other part are energy cost and labor cost. So this energy cost will also increase food inflation, will create food inflation. As a consequence, overall inflation will happen. So those are the mechanics. If you go to the next slide, you will see that today we are already in between 40 to 55% of increase of natural gas and 50 to 75% of increase of urea prices, which keep increasing, and that's the major concern. Next slide, please. No, before that, you jumped too many. One more before. You skip all this. Before. There. No, next. Okay, there, please. So what we see here is the variance that we observe across different regions. Let's just focus on the right-hand side corner. The median diesel price change between Latin America plus 19%, Europe 28%, Asia 25%, Africa 13%. Now, this is a result of two things. It's a result of the policies being put by countries already. Europe is implementing several policies to control the transmission of energy prices to diesel, but also it is a result of the intensity in agri-food systems of energy use. And as you can see, Europe has a significant intensity in the left-hand side of energy use. And that's what we need to look at carefully and to assess carefully the consequences of that. The next, please. This is just to show that right now we have enough supplies of food and enough stocks. That's why the FAO Food Price Index, Commodity Price Index of the month of March was not so high and was stabilized. And that is what is because of the level of commodity prices. But we now are starting to see increases in commodity prices for corn, 6%, for soybeans, 19%, and then, of course, for rice, between negative and positive because we have enough commodities to consume. Next, please. This is just to show that we already have a significant dependency on some countries which are importing from this region and the intensity of use of fertilizers. Turkey is one of those which depend heavily from the Gulf supply, but beyond fertilizers, again, there is the energy issue which is increasing the cost to farmers, which right now is creating a negative margin to them. Next, please. Now we have simulated the impacts of this, and we are very aligned with what IMF produced. We did it a little bit earlier, but essentially what we are going to observe is a minus 1.6 effect over consumption, on household consumption, welfare, and this will also imply a potential impact of around minus 1.7% less in economic growth. Why? Because the high food prices and the food inflation and the overall inflation will force countries to increase interest rates, and this will be impacting economic growth, and that's what we want to minimize, and that's the impact that we want to minimize. If you move to next slide, this is what shows the policies being already implemented. The only important thing here to raise, which is important, is that most of the policies implementing are affecting the fiscal sector, and that's something that we need to carefully assess. Next slide, please, and I will stop there. Next slide. Okay, here are our recommendations. But first, to have this in context of what we are talking about. We are talking about of a situation in which we are reducing to the world, just in fertilizers, just doing a quick envelope, 5.7 million tons per year. That means 110,000 tons per week. And that means between 1 billion to 2 billion, depending on the conversion rates, of number of meals that will be affected as a result of that per week. 1 to 2 billion meals per week that will be affected. That means if we take 3 meals per day, 95 million people per week will be affected because of the level. And this is a fast calculation, but it's more or less to give you a magnitude. So we have split the recommendations in 3 periods, between 0 to 90 days, 90 to 360 days, and 360 days. And this is linked to the crop calendar, because as the days move, we start to move from east to west, south to north in terms of crop calendar, and we are now already affecting large key exporting countries. So in the short term, the major measures are to develop alternative trade routes, to enhance market monitoring through the Agricultural Market Information System, to avoid export restrictions on fertilizer and energy products, to support food consumption of the most vulnerable people through targeted social protection programs, and to help humanitarian logistical, because the logistical costs have increased substantially. Just to move now commodities to Afghanistan, for example, has tripled or quadrupled the distance that they have to cover, and that means a significant increase in cost, which have an impact on all humanitarian agencies. Between 90 to 360 days, our major priority is to secure viability of farmers, especially small and medium farmers, and that requires some financial support, temporal financial support, like what happened in COVID-19 with SMEs. But we also need to help the food importing countries that require fertilizers now, because if the strait opens, they will have to pay more right now, and that requires some liquidity. And these are countries like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Kenya, Sudan, and Thailand, and also inclusive Brazil, which used to import 45% of urea from this region. And also we need to diversify import sources. On the long term, as it was mentioned, I think it's really important to prepare for the future. The future is already here. In May 15, we start with El Niño also. So that will convolute the situation that we have right now, plus El Niño, which the probability of having a super intense Niño is very high right now. It's increasing by day. It's 1 in 4 right now for the highest intense El Niño. So we need to start to set up infrastructure around so that we can build up more diversification, access to these types of inputs to avoid this situation in the future. And we need to accelerate in the energy mix, which have improved substantially and which have shown to make us resilient. If not, oil prices will be already over $140, and they are not yet because of this change in the energy mix. And of course, we need to prepare to a more complex structural change, because what we are looking forward, if the strait doesn't open in the next, we are already 64 days. In the next 30 days, we are going to end in a situation of scarcity of commodities, food price commodities increasing, food inflation, overall inflation, and that means that we will impact economic growth. We will be living in a world of stagflation, high inflation and low economic growth. So let me stop there, and thank you so much.